Reagan Grimes wins the Cal Pro. Our review coming up.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. And we are live here at Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, joined by the technician, Chris Aceto. And Chris, big weekend in California. Reagan Grimes wins that, going to the Olympia. Big as I've seen him ever, probably. You know, I remember when you trained him years ago, when he first kind of came on the scene. And I didn't really think he could be a guy that would be like a mass monster. I know you told me, Dave, this guy's got tremendous potential. He can go far. He's got a great structure. But I didn't think he was going to be like a monstrously big guy, and he really was kind of impressive with the amount of size that he's added over the last 3-4 years.
Well, when he turned pro in Brazil, actually, funny, he turned pro in Brazil, and I think the following week or so, or 2 weeks, he came to the New York Pro to watch it, and I remember being in a restaurant, texting with Jay, or talking to Jay, and Jay says, "How's this Reagan kid?" And I said, "Well, he's either gonna, he's either gonna like make it or not, or something like that." But I specifically referenced, I said he reminds me a lot of ways of a young Dennis Wolf, in that that he had big giant structure like Dennis Wolf. And I said, it remains to be seen, like, how long it will take to add the size like Dennis Wolf has. You know what I mean? To add all that amount of muscle. I mean, he was like 20 then, maybe 230 pounds, and he's 234 now. I'm just kidding, Reagan. Who knows what he weighs now, but he's big.
Well, he went to Kuwait for a while. Remember when you were training him? I think he placed him really well in a few pro shows.
First pro show he did when he was 21. When I was coaching him, he got second place.
Yeah. I mean, he was really doing well. He wasn't huge back then, but he had really good structure.
Yeah.
And then he somehow got conned into going out to the camel crew out there in Kuwait. What did he last, about a month out there?
I think he lasted 6 weeks, so he went AWOL for Christmas.
he snuck away from the camel crew, came back, and then didn't you have him do a classic physique show?
Yeah, then he did won the New York Pro and Classic,
which he almost died probably making that weight, I'm sure.
No, he made the weight. I don't even know what year that was.
Isn't that didn't you have to suck him down like a ridiculous amount of poundage?
54 pounds in 2 days, but it's not like 20 pounds in a week or something.
Yeah.
And then I think, I don't even remember what he did after that. He went back to the Open.
Yeah, he went back to, I think, did he do the Milos protocol for a little bit?
Oh no, he did the Classic Olympia that year.
Right.
Yeah. And then
it was obviously he gave up too much size, to do that.
Yeah, I think he had co-coaches for that show. In fact, I know I don't do well with co-coaches.
No, I know you don't like that. It's like the year that Kai had Ron Norman and George Farah at the same time. In connecting rooms, right? So then Reagan went to Milos for a little while and did the whole Nasser El Somebody size thing and put a lot of size on with Milos.
He had very good shows. He had a very good run, for a year or so.
And I don't know how much time did he take off since his last show?
And then he did the Olympia 1 year. I think that year he got like 7th or 8th. And then I think he took a year off or so, and then came back this year.
He definitely made some really nice improvements.
Yeah, I told you in New York he was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great,
And
great. I kid. He was great for the first minute and a half.
better in New York or better in Cal?
Oh, better in Cal simply because he looked big through the show. In the New York, he only looked big for first. It's not. We talked about it last week. First couple minutes, then he faded.
Yeah. Well, the lineup wasn't as difficult.
Yeah,
as
it was a bigger lineup too. I mean, you got like Nick Walker and Bonac Stick, and even he went up 1-on-1 with Crizzo, who's also a big structure and big dude. So different lineup.
Tell me what you liked about him in Cal, and tell me what you weren't so thrilled about.
I like everything about him with the exception of I mean, it's the quads. The quads are. The problem is the quads have probably gotten bigger, but so hasn't he's just a lot of width, so it's hard to make those legs look big, and you see it in comparison. That's where when you see it, you don't see it maybe necessarily when he comes out individually, hits the front shots, front double, front lat spread, but it's in comparisons where when you're standing next to someone that the legs look small for the competition, smaller for the competition.
How tall is he? He looks really tall in this lineup here.
No, he might be like.
Is he 6'1"?
He might be 6. I think 6'1", 5. Yeah, 6 over 6 for sure.
He's like towering over these guys. They look like they're short compared to him. And I don't think Sass is that short, is he?
Sass is about 5'8", I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that's kind of short compared to him.
Maybe 5'8".
So Reagan gets straight ones, Sass straight seconds, and then Leandro Perez, who I thought looked really good from Brazil, also he gets third place. He gets some mixed scores with his countryman Bruno Santos, also from Brazil, who takes fourth. So I thought it was a pretty decent lineup for the Cal. I think it was smart for Reagan to go out there, get that qualification for sure, right?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, good move, and I think that top 5, 4 were very good.
Sometimes you got to just go from show to show to show to show, and essentially until you get that pro card. I mean, until you get that Olympia qualification, and Reagan did it, and I think that was the right move on his part, and he got rewarded for it. I mean, Nick had to do it, right? Nick didn't want to go to New York, but he did it. He got the qualification. Sometimes doing a couple shows also kind of gets the rust out, and kind of gives you some idea of like how to fix problems. Like you said, Reagan faded really bad in New York. He didn't fade here in California. He must have figured out something that he did wrong in New York, and now it's fixed. So now when he goes to the Olympia later this year in October, he's not going to make that mistake. So, sometimes not competing the whole year is not a good thing either, especially when you're still kind of young in the sport and you're still trying to figure out the best way to peak yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's, experience. That's how you learn from either, you learn from what you do right and you learn from what you do wrong. Usually you're too excited to learn from what you do right. So you end up, if you got a level head, learning from what you do wrong.
How does this physique do at the Olympia? I interviewed Rich Gaspari this past week, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And we did a little breakdown of, who's the guys to look out for at the Olympia. And, there's about 6 really good guys, obviously, up there. Does Reagan come into play? Is he a guy that could make the top 6, or is he still, you think, just outside that top group?
Well, I just think that, the top 6 are, we talked about 5 people last week who could win the Olympia.
Yeah.
So, there's almost like a lock on 5 and 6. Outside of injuries, outside of XYZ, whatever, missed peaks or something, I think the top 5 are really, top 6 are really challenging to slide by. Especially when you're not missing legs. He's not missing them. but especially when, I just look at like his balance versus, let's say, Hardy's balance.
Yeah.
To use him as yeah, of course I'm using the like most conditioned guy on the planet with possibly some of the best legs on the planet, but it just, I mean, that's who you're going to be standing next to. So,
Right. No, you make a very good point. But I think with his size and his height, that's going to definitely help him on that Olympia stage more so than maybe the smaller guys that are trying to break into that top group. I think he's got, like I'm thinking like a Antonio Burton or something like that, is going to have a little bit more difficulty only because he's not as tall. Regan kind of sticks out on stage when he stands in the lineup. I think he can still be harder than he was in Cal. What do you think about that?
Well, he was standing next to Hardy Jr. at the show.
Hardy Jr. So, yeah, Sass looked really great. I think this might have been his best look to date.
Which means, could he be harder? I guess anyone could be harder standing next to someone who's in, like, that type of condition. So,
well, I mean, I think we've seen Regan harder, so I think that Regan can achieve that level of hardness, and I think that that's going to go a longer way. Regan has almost like a Steve Kuklo physique, right?
Oh my God, Dave.
You're thinking that?
No, I almost said he reminds me of Kukla.
He does that
because Kukla's physique is like, it's big, it's dense, it's hard, but it's not like refined, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Polish. I've used that word endlessly in like the last 3 weeks. Polish. Like his polish next to Sass is like not even in the same stratosphere.
Yeah.
Kukla, the knock against Kukla was same thing. Like didn't have a lot of like ultra refinement to his physique. Didn't mean he didn't have low body fat or wasn't in shape. It just means like
it wasn't fibery looking on stage. Yeah. I think Regan though still can achieve that. I don't think that like some guys can't achieve it. I think he can achieve it. I think it was a big deal for him to come in full enough in this show. And you mentioned it when he got flat last week. It kind of hurt his look.
Yeah.
He might need to put a little bit more muscle on so that he can then bring his physique down. I saw an interview with Dorian. They did it was a reel that someone put up a clip of, and they asked Dorian. They showed a picture of Derek Lunsford, and they said to Dorian, "Do you find that would this guy give you if you were competing against him back in your day? Would he give you sleepless nights?" And Dorian said, laughed, and I think Cormier was on the podcast too. He said, "I wouldn't lose any sleep over it." But Dorian had that ultra fibery, crazy striated look to him that you couldn't even really get a good appreciation unless you saw him in person. I don't know if there's many guys. Maybe Hadi Chopin is the only guy who really has that look now out there, where every muscle in his body is just like freaky, fibery looking. Branch Warren had that look too for a while, and I don't know if that's a genetic thing or if it's just a hard work thing, or if it's a combination of hard work, hardcore dieting together with a lot of muscle. But I think if someone like Regan got that look, I think that would be super dangerous.
Well, I think if that's like saying if anyone in the Olympia that look, they'd all be dangerous.
Yeah.
If Greg Kovacs got that condition, he would have won the Olympia
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I understand what you're saying, though. I understand, but I think Regan's got a pretty enough physique that, and I think if his conditioning came in a little better, his waistline would look a lot more impressive. Do you remember when Hadi did the Arnold 2 years ago and won that? How shrink wrapped his waist was, and then he came to the Olympia in 24 at the end of the year, at the end of last year. And you didn't have quite that shrink wrap look around the waist. And so he can achieve it, but he didn't have it. But when he had it, it was like, there's no way this guy could lose. And I think if Regan can get that like shrink wrapped look around his waist, he's got a really nice structure. He's got big shoulders. He's got a relatively small waist in proportion. I think he'd be much, much more dangerous. Like I said, I don't know what it's going to take for him to get there. If it's harder dieting, if it's a combination of harder dieting with more muscle. But if he can get that level of conditioning, he's going to be very hard to beat.
Hard to beat as Mr. Olympia, or
Hard to beat in any lineup. I think he's got a lot of muscle on his body. He's formidable. Like I said, I'm not saying I don't know if he's ready to win an Olympia, but he can certainly possibly win an Arnold or something like that.
yeah, no, he's very good. He's very good. I mean, I was so impressed with him at the New York Pro.
Yeah. Was Sass upset with the outcome of this show?
Of course, but he didn't say that. But of course, you're going to be upset. It's like the third year, so
yeah. What's next? What's his next move now? Because he obviously is still trying to qualify for the Olympia, right?
Toronto.
Yeah, okay, he's going to Toronto. I was going to ask you that. I mean, luckily, there's a lot of shows back to back to back to back. So I mean,
yeah. Well, you know what's crazy, Dave, is he did the New York, which seemed like a month ago. He did that, and he flew back Sunday night on the red eye. So he got into England on Monday, and then he traveled Wednesday morning back to California all the way from England.
Wow.
So
you think that hurt him in terms of
not one bit. I thought he looked nuts. I thought he won lots of shots in the show.
Yeah, I think the thing that hurt him is that Kuklo is a lot tall. Kuklo. Now I'm calling Kuklo. That Reagan is a lot taller than him and wider than him, and has a little more wow. But I think that Sass obviously had, number one, much better tan, better conditioning, drier.
Well, let's do it. Let's do our. I mean, you can't see them side by because you don't have the pictures.
I could pull up a side by side. Hold on, let me see if I can find a side by side.
Run through the poses because it's a tutorial judging.
Let me see if I can pull up if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Hold on.
I think the news can't really get the pictures won't download.
Here we can see the posing right here. That's Leandro Perez to the right of Reagan, and then Sass is to the left of him. Like Sass is way harder in this shot, but Reagan is just really impressive because he's got the the big upper body, the big wide rib cage and everything. I think where Sass beats Reagan is some of these shots from behind, maybe.
No, Sass loses the back shots for sure.
You think he does? Why? Just based on size of Reagan's back?
I mean, if you look at the pictures, just even individually, you can pick them up on the NPC News. The comparisons come up.
So where do you think he loses his shots?
Sass loses the back shots.
Yeah.
Ironically, Sass has better hamstrings on the back shots, but that doesn't help him because Reagan's got great hamstrings too. But I would think that nobody had Reagan's hamstrings coming into the show, but Sass is better on the hams. I have Sass on both side shots, side chest, side tricep.
Yeah, he definitely wins side tricep, I'd say. Good, he's got really good abs.
Abs and thighs, most muscular, by a mile.
Reagan's tan didn't help me either. I don't want to go on another tan rant, but
yeah, you can't do 2 rants in a week on the same.
No, I've done about 3 of them. But he definitely better get himself into a tan.
How about the muscular?
I mean, Leandro Perez has probably got a great tan too. These guys, the Brazilians always have good tans.
So the point is that on judging this show, you can go pose by pose and have Sass win more poses. And because of Reagan's structure, you can still say Reagan, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In other words, anyways, you can actually lose more poses, but at the end of the day, say like, okay, this guy's overall a little bit better.
Yeah, I think his structures, he's just bigger. And like you said, his conditioning is not as good as Sass's, but it's good enough. And for him to win this show, I mean, he's got hamstrings, he's got glutes. He doesn't really have any visible fat on him. He's just, maybe he can be a little grainier, for his physique. But I think he's still improving. I don't know how old Reagan is, but I think we're going to still see more improvements come from him because And I think if he puts on another maybe 5 to 7 pounds, I think he's going to be super dangerous.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that for sure.
With the big guys, it seems like the more back they get, the more impressive they are. And like you said, some of his legs are good, but they're not like really great, you know?
Yeah.
His right leg is better than the left leg. I don't know. That left leg looks like it's a little behind. It's kind of like the Jay. Jay had the one good leg too. But I think this is a good showing for Reagan. I think he should be proud of himself. I think he did a great job. I think, he did two weeks in a row, and he got better from week to week, which is the judges like to see that. And he's going to the Olympia, and that's all that counts. That's all that matters, really. Who we seeing? So who are we going to see next week in Toronto with Sass? Do we have a lineup yet?
Weeks, I think, right? It's not this weekend.
Oh, it's 2 weeks. Okay.
I don't even know who's doing the show. Not sure who's doing the show, but I would expect, all the people who are really good here, Perez, Bruno. They'll obviously be there.
What about this? Hold on. This Legion Sports Fest. Is this an open? This is an open show next week.
Yeah, that's right. That's an open show next.
How come Sass isn't doing that?
Because I just told you the travel schedule, right?
Oh, you said he had to leave? I thought he was. Now that he's in California, why wouldn't he just go? I didn't hear what you said, Chris. What did you say?
He flew from New York. If you missed the previous 15
No, you said he moved back. He went back to England, and then he went back to.
He flew from New York, back home on Sunday. Got there Monday. Flew back from Wednesday all the way to California from England. Goes back. I think he's flying tonight. Gets back Monday, and Dave wants to fly him out to California again, California again on Wednesday.
Well, my point was, why didn't he just stay in California and do the other show?
I think he has a family, so.
No, I mean, you don't think they would have been okay? I mean, it's more traumatic to fly back and forth, I would think, than stay out there.
Traumatic. Maybe it's expensive to stay for 3 weeks from New York to.
Chris, I think you should be out there in California for 2 straight weeks with him. Do you think your wife will buy it?
Oh yeah, should move down and stay in your snake pit.
Are you driving to Toronto or no?
The most traveling, Dave, I've ever done in like 5 years.
I know. I was going to ask you, are you going to Toronto? Because you can drive there from your house, right?
Tebow. I went to New York Pro. I went to Pittsburgh.
Are you going to Toronto? My question. No. Okay. All right. We'll let you off the hook for that one. What did you think of Leandro Perez?
Fantastic.
Good future, definitely future dangerous.
Yeah. Very big, very round, very dense, and in very good shape. He just happened to go up against
2 good guys.
Two good guys. That's it. That's the answer. I mean, he's in shape and he's big and he looks great.
Maybe he'll do the show next week.
Yeah, he may.
He might qualify for the Olympia. Who's going to beat him? Unless someone comes out of the woodwork.
Well, what's his face is doing it? Baby Dexter.
Oh, Tony O'Burton?
Yeah.
Well, it could be a battle. This guy's a lot bigger than Tonio. And he's in really good shape. Look at that back. He's got a really good back.
He went up against the structure guy next to the conditioning guy, and he was like out. He has a good structure. He's his structure is good. His legs are better than Reagan's, but he doesn't have Reagan's stance structure.
No.
So that puts him on the odd man out. And his condition's good, but he doesn't have Sass's condition, so he lands exactly where he was supposed to land, 3rd place.
You know what it is? He's not as wide as Reagan.
Yes.
But he's got good delts. He's got really good delts.
Yeah.
He does look like, this guy says he looked like Anthony Pasquale. He does look like a little bit like Anthony Pasquale. If anyone can remember him. I think he could. I think if he does enough, there's enough shows now that when we're talking about this, that I think he possibly could possibly qualify if he keeps going to show. So we got Legion Sports Fest this week. Then we got Toronto, which will be packed. And then you got the M-Pro in Spain.
Yeah.
And then Dubai, which is going to be giving away 140 grand. Who do you got in that? You got anyone in that show, Chris?
No.
Anyone who's not doing that show is a nutcase if you don't do that show.
Right? I mean, a lot of people already did their stuff. You know what I mean? It's a hard.
I know. I would have liked to seen Andrew Jack win that money, but I mean, especially since he lives right there.
Lenda would have been right on like Instagram Live saying, I don't know why he gets 140 grand when the girls they didn't even have a women's show. Unlike women in those Arab countries.
Yeah. I heard a good story this past weekend about Ron Love and Linda Murray. I guess they were dating back in the day.
Yeah, I know. Everyone knew that.
Anyway, it was a good story. I probably shouldn't tell the story. So
no, you can tell it to me off the air, Dave. So
okay. All right.
Might get demonetized.
Put it this way: Linda Murray was not happy with Ron Love in this story, so I'll leave it at that.
Who had bigger belts, Linda or Ron Love? Ron
Love was a cop, in the Michigan area, Detroit area, and the Davishes, who were very good friends with Dean Caputo.
Yeah.
Where I was this past weekend out in Ohio. The Davishes are the ones who started Powerhouse Gym. And do you know how they named the Powerhouse Gym? I found out the story. I never knew the story.
Davishes were incredible, but go ahead.
Yeah. Do you know how the Davishes came up with the name Powerhouse?
No. Second time I've said no.
Okay. I was giving you a chance. I believe that Norm was a big beer drinker and candy bar eater, and I believe the candy bar was named Powerhouse that he was eating.
Oh, I know the Powerhouse candy bar, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what they named it after, the Powerhouse candy bar.
That's like Joe Weider drinking that Olympia beer or something.
Yeah, and then they named it the Olympia after it. Yeah, so that's where Powerhouse came from. There's there's still like 300 Powerhouse gyms. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's funny because I don't think anyone ever thought Powerhouse would be successful against Gold's and World Gym, and it's super successful still to this day.
They were kinder to their franchise.
Yes.
No, they're not a franchise. Are they franchise or license? There's a difference.
You pay a fee every year. It's just like you pay a licensing fee every year. Yeah. You can do whatever you want with the gym as long as you pay the fee and they approve you.
People love that because they didn't want, Gold's and World Gym to be, looking over them for every single thing that they did. So them a lot more freedom. Yeah. I remember the Powerhouse convention had to be, oh my God, Dave, 25 years ago, and it was packed. And you know who it was all packed with?
Who?
All previous Gold's Gym.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I know Weinberger changed from a Gold's Gym to a Powerhouse.
There you go.
So did the Montanari brothers in Connecticut. So I'm glad. I'm glad Will is still alive and doing well.
Crystal, and the other brother. I think
Norm was the other brother. Norm died, but Will is still.
Yeah, Crystal, Norm, and Will.
And they're doing great. I love Will. Every time I haven't seen Will in a while. I interviewed him a few years ago from his gym, and he's still super. If he was your friend, he's super loyal. Yeah. But man, Dean was telling me some funny stories about those guys. They were tough guys back in the day. You didn't mess with those guys. And they were in a very tough neighborhood with that Highland Park Powerhouse outside Detroit there, which was where the first Powerhouse was not a good neighborhood, Chris. Yeah. I don't know have you ever been there?
No, I've only been to Detroit once.
Yeah. I've been there once. It's not a good neighborhood. So I think they moved it, but it's the original one in Highland Park was terrible. And so people like crackheads would come in there and they would have to beat them up and kick them out of the gym and stuff like that. Because people would come in and try to rob people in there, supposedly, like what Dean told me. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, Powerhouse is still going strong. I think I would consider opening a Powerhouse if I was going to open a gym. I think they give you a pretty good deal. You know, the franchise fee is not high, and they pretty much let you be creative. Supposedly, Will is opening up a crazy big one somewhere in Michigan. It's going to be like the biggest powerhouse of all time, and it's going to be like nuts. I don't want to quote. I think it was like over 100,000 square feet or something like that. So I don't know where the exact location in Michigan is going to be, but when I find out, I got to get Will on the show to talk about this. I think this is going to be like the crown jewel of the Powerhouse franchise. Although, do you remember when they had Powerhouse on right by Gold's Gym in Venice there?
Yeah, they had it there for how long? How many years was it there? 3?
It didn't last that well. I think it was very expensive, the rent there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because that was the word on the street the minute they opened it. People knew it. Whatever the number was insane.
Did you ever train in that gym?
I never went into that gym. No.
No. Stridham lived above there, right? That wasn't his like house, right? Apartment right above there?
Yeah.
Dean was telling me that Stridham lived right next, or maybe Gaspari told me that Stridham lived right next door to Barry DeMay. They both lived up there.
Oh, at that building there?
Yeah, they were always fighting with each other. Yeah.
I used to think that was, I never went into, I went into that building once, actually, in the I used to think, like, when I was young and working at Gold's Venice, that was I just thought it was like the epitome of luxury.
Well, I figured you're such a real estate guy. I figured you would have definitely have gone in there. Yeah.
Although I had the vision then.
Yeah.
I think it was like, wow.
It was very expensive, supposedly there. And supposedly Stridham he lived there, but he would like literally, people told me he would get in the garage underneath the thing and he would drive his car across the street to the firehouse. And then he would drive his car another half a block to the gym. Like he would never walk.
I forget what car he had, but he had like
a BMW, right? Or Mercedes, something like that.
Pick one with a convertible, and I think it was.
I don't remember which one he had. Yeah, I know he had a really nice car though.
Mike Christian got his like one up them right after.
Mike Christian, I remember someone told me because I was into BMWs at the time, and Mike Christian, I think, got like a 7 Series BMW and like cut the top off of it, right, and made it into like a convertible, right?
Yeah. He was the man when he'd drive that car to Gold Venice. It was like a hedge fund guy turned.
It was one of a kind. That's why, Chris.
Dave. It was okay. So you're talking to someone who knows nothing of a kind of car. I had no interest in cars at that time. Well, now, but at that time, like when I was in Gold's Venice, I had to be like 22, and Mike would drive that car up. That was a car that you knew was special. Yeah. No matter what.
Well, because you couldn't buy it. He actually had it made. You know, no one would ever think to cut the top off of a 7 Series BMW.
Nobody enjoyed the attention that car garnered in it more than Mike Christian.
He probably looked like a pimp in that car, I'm sure, right?
He loved. And he would. I think Ed gave him a parking spot. You would have to ask him.
Oh, did he really?
But if he didn't have a spot, Mike would wait like 1 hour. He would just, because he'd have to park it in the garage. I mean, in the front. In the front lot, rather than just like leave it somewhere.
Right.
The top was cut off.
Yeah.
And just for protection, nobody would. Yeah. If it was parked directly in front of the gym.
Right. That's funny. But yeah, evidently, I guess since Barry DeMay lived next door to Stridham up there, Barry would be playing music late and have girls over. And Gary would be trying to go to sleep, so you can get up at like 6 a.m. and go train and stuff like that. And they would be screaming at each other, like banging on the walls and stuff like that.
That's right.
It was crazy what they would go through over there.
I used to know it all. I used to know because people knew. People knew what like Mike Christian paid for the car. People knew what was. You hear what Gary paid for rent? You hear what Mike paid for that car?
Well, I think they would brag about it because they wanted to let everyone know how much it costed to live there. That's why. I think when Stridham lived there, though, wasn't he with the WBF at that time?
Yeah, he might have been paying $3,000. He bought it. I was told he paid $33,000, which is a lot back then for his boat. and I think he was paying $3,000 rent, and I think
which is nothing now. You can't even get a fucking shoebox for the dentist for that.
Back then it was like,
outrageous. Yeah, probably.
Go to like Kookaroo Chicken for $4.95.
Shridan was working for the WBF. He was making, I think, $350 a year or something like that, $350,000 a year, or maybe more. It might be more. I don't even know. I
adjusted for inflation. I just gave you a chicken meal for $4.95.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is, I don't know if you knew this, but Gaspari told me this weekend that he was offered $250,000.
Yeah, Bob told me that. Even Bob,
and he turned it down because he said he was mad that I think I forget who was offered. I think Barry DeMay was offered more. I think Barry was making 300 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, Richie, I said, that's a lot of money you turned down. He goes, I know. He goes, I didn't. I said, I guess probably in the long run, it probably paid off for you, but yeah, they wanted to. They really wanted Richie bad. He told me, Vince McMahon did. They were swooning. They were really trying to get him over there.
How much did they pay Lou Ferrigno, and how fast did Joe Weider blow a gasket?
That was the only person Joe wanted back, right? I mean, and he didn't care about anyone else, but he didn't like the fact that they were trying to get Lou back over there.
They did get him originally, remember?
Yeah, I don't know how did Weider get him back? I mean, how did he get out of that contract?
Oh, God, I can't. Joe probably called him endlessly, and.
But how did Vince let him out of that contract?
My guess. You want my guess?
Yeah.
Joe paid him to get him out of the contract.
Oh, you think he paid Vince? Oh.
That is a guess, and I wish you could confirm it.
Yeah, I know. I wish we could confirm it.
Confirmable from someone.
You know who can confirm it? Lou can confirm it. We got to find out from Lou. I got to ask him.
Way that he just I'm under contract with WBF, and now I'm under contract with Joe without an enormous amount of money changing hands.
Yeah, no, I got to ask Lou because it's long enough now that I don't think anyone cares anymore. Yeah. But it was.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
About the contract. Here, Vince. Here's the money. Let him go.
Well, what's his name? Because Gaspari told me that the smartest guy with his money was Troy Zucolato, because Troy took all that money that he made from the WBF and he, invested it. He was buying real estate. He bought the rejuvenation clinic that he did.
He had the rejuvenation clinics before anyone.
Yeah, no one even knew it. I didn't even know what a rejuvenation clinic was when he had one of those.
They were only quirky little clinics, exclusive to like L.A.
In California, right? They weren't anyplace else. You're right.
He may have had the first one. I remember into him somewhere or something, and he said I have a rejuvenation clinic, or maybe someone told me he has a rejuvenation clinic, and they gave me the number, like what he made, like I don't know, year 3 into it. It was big time.
They also told me he owns a lot of car washes. He owns like 25 car washes, something like that. He's a
California.
Yeah, he owns a lot of, he's smart. He's a very smart business.
Car wash in New York, Dave, where you're washing a lot of dirt. California.
No, dude, the only thing you're washing in California is money. That's all you're washing.
Rinsing it off so that your Mike Christian car can stay looking.
That's right. I take the car wash. I take my car to the car wash every day. You know that, right? Because in Florida, they have these, like, you just pay one price for the whole. It's like a gym membership, basically,
Yeah.
And it's one price. You can take it as many times as you want.
I know people who go through those like twice a day.
No, I'm not that. I wish I had the free time to go through twice a day.
It's someone who does some construction work for me. I said, the greatest truck. I said, this truck is the cleanest construction. Car wash twice a day.
Yeah, my kids, when they go to school, they're putting in city water, so that it's like a disaster construction zone. So every time I drop them off, I have to go get the car washed because it's like covered with like soot. It looks like a volcano just went off. When it spews out all the soot before the lava comes out.
Just perfectly covers the car.
Yeah, it's like Pompeii, before they buried the city there with the ash. But yeah, so I was out in Ohio this past weekend, Streetsboro. We had a great show, the Northwest Championships. Richie was there with me. We hung out the whole time. I actually did a really nice, good interview. We'll put that up this week. I did a seminar out there, a real nice seminar on nutrition. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. We videotaped it, so I'm going to put it up in 4 parts. And I interviewed all the winners there. So from the Dean Caputo Northwest Championships. Dean does a great thing, Chris, to for all the competitors there. Anyone who wins an overall, he'll pay your way, application fee, airfare, hotel, to go to a national show like the Team Universe or that.
You must get a killer turnout just for that.
Yeah, no, he did. That's what I'm saying. It's a great idea. It's a very small investment for a promoter to make to get a very big payoff. And I think that more promoters should do that. Offer to pay for the winners to go to a national level show, and you'll see better guys show up at your show because it's expensive. You know how much it costs to enter. It's $350 application fee. The plane flight's probably $500-600, and then your hotel can be God knows how much.
Hotels are just out of control everywhere.
I know. So good turnout. Had some fun out there, and made some new friends and some new connections. And I always tell people, look, whenever I travel, it always turns out to be a good thing. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck to travel. When you travel, you really network. And the best advice that was given to me when I was younger and just getting into the sport, I think I was about 23, 24. Mike Lyons, who ran the agency in Manhattan, he used to send us out on commercial auditions and stuff. He said, Dave, let me tell you something. I don't care how much money you have or if you don't have, you got to go to the big shows, the Arnold, the Olympia, Nationals. I said, why? He goes, because it's the same people at every show. And once everyone starts to know who you are, you're going to network with these people because you guys have similar interests. This person's going to be looking for a guy to do this, and you're going to need a guy that does that, and you're going to trade ideas. And before you know it, you're going to be networking with people and making a lot more business for yourself. And you know what? He was 100% right. I can't pass on enough of that information to you guys. You got to, if you really are interested in being in our industry and making money from this industry, you got to go to the shows and you got to talk to people and you got to walk around and network. And especially if you're up and coming and no one knows who you are. Once you're an old fuck like Chris and I, it doesn't really matter anymore. But but seriously, no, if you go to these shows, you're going to have a lot of opportunities presented to you. So.
Mike Lyons, Dave, is the Bob Gruskin of casting agents.
Yes, absolutely. You'd never think he was a casting agent. Yeah.
You'd never think he's a casting agent, just as you'd never think that Bob Gruskin is
a coach.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Mike actually lives out by me now. Isn't that funny? I see him every time I go to Mel's show in Punta Gorda. He's there. I said, Mike, how did we wind up in the same place? I said, so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? He got me a lot of gigs over the years. And he said, you know what? One of the things why you were successful, Dave, is because you showed up.
Dave, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that's two. You took I was going to say that you showed up. Yeah,
you have to show up. Do you think I wanted to get on the Long Island Railroad, 2-3 times a week sometimes? He'd be like, I got an audition for you. You got to come in. I said, Mike, he's like, it's up to you. And I'd never say no. I'd get on that Long Island Railroad. I'd go into Penn Station. I'd walk or take a cab to the audition. It would be 5 seconds to the audition. I'd get back in the cab, go back to the railroad, take the train back home. And I would do that all the time. And you know what? The times I never wanted to go, those are the interviews, those are the auditions I always got and the commercials I got. So speaking about commercials, Dean Caputo was in a couple of really good commercials back in the day.
What was he in?
What was he telling me he was in? He did a couple commercials. He made a lot of money, he told me. I can't remember, but he also, if you remember, he was the GNC guy.
Yeah.
You remember when you were a kid, you'd go into GNC and you'd see this guy, they'd have a hole cut out of him holding a jug of the GNC protein.
Yeah.
That was Dean had a really good gig with GNC. And then he left GNC and he got involved with, remember, Universal?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, the Ultimate Nutrition. And he was with them for years. And then I guess, he made Ultimate got taken in by GNC. So So he was still promoting GNC just via Ultimate. So
Yeah.
he was a guy who never turned pro like me, great physique. And, it was just, the era was just really, really difficult. And he wound up having a kid, and he wound up having to, stop competing because of that. But he always made money in the industry because he was a guy that was a hustler, like me, like Richie, like you. And, even though he didn't turn pro, he made a lot of money from the industry. He's still making money from the industry.
No. Well, how many shows he's promoting?
He only promotes this one show, but he's got it. He got back into the gym business. He had a really successful Powerhouse from when he was 18 years old. And now he has another Powerhouse in a very similar location, a couple blocks from where it used to be. It's beautiful. It's the cleanest gym you'll ever go in.
Why did he get out?
Because I think he got involved with the supplements, and I think it was too much to do, both. He said though that his passion was always the gym business. He really likes the gym business a lot, much better. Which you don't usually hear that from people.
Yeah, he's had that show for a long time. Team Caputo Classic, whatever. Team Caputo Northwest Classic, or he kind of started it up again. He had a show a long time ago, and then he kind of was missing from the business for a while. He said, pull up a picture of him so the guys know what we're talking about. Anyway, he's a super, super good guy. I've known him for over 20 years now. There he is. That's him.
Yeah. He had a lot of muscle. Big dude. Back in the day. So, and that's it. So I had a nice time out there. And wait, hold on, I want to show you one more picture.
Yeah, he had the one where he would hit he had big pecs.
Yeah. Let's see if I get another picture.
Like the American version of Reagan.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's also connected to, look at that, right? Big pecs.
Yeah. I said, Dean, what happened to your hair, man? You're like me. You lost all your hair. He's like, I said, it's all these blonde guys with the great locks of blonde hair, Doug Wentz, right? They all lose their hair when they get older.
Send them to Turkey.
Except you, Chris. You kept your hair. You and Jay.
I've been scrolling for the Turkish Airlines. I lose it.
You and Jay never lost your hair. I don't know how you pulled it off, but good hair genetics, I guess. He kind of was a Jay Cutler-ish type of physique back in the day,
Dean Caputo was really good. He just was up against blockbusters.
Yeah, it was a tough thing.
It's like he was really good, and he just was in a tough era where you had to win the overall. And I mean, he looks really. That looks like a pro physique for this day and age.
Yeah, definitely.
How long ago was that?
Was it probably the early 90s, maybe?
Yeah, he had to go against 154-pound Victor, only 4 feet 8 inches tall.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of Victor, not Victor Terra, Victor Richards. So Gaspari was telling me a great story about how he competed at some.
Oh, I know that story.
Oh, you know the story? Lou Zwick called him up and said, "You got to compete at this." He wanted to do the Teenage America, and Lou Zwick said, "You got to do this other teenage show." So he's out in California, he's doing this teenage show, and he competed against Victor Richards.
Yeah.
And Victor Richards, he said, was the biggest 18-year-old you've ever seen.
After what's his
name?
He
wasn't hard.
He was the West Coast Derek Whitsett.
And Richie beat him, of course, because Richie was shredded to the bone.
I remember that I've heard that story before. And Lou Zwick didn't tell Richie that Vic was going to be there. And
no, he didn't tell him.
Tell Victor Richards that Gaspari was going to be there.
Isn't that funny? And he said Victor Richards was yelling at him, "Little man, how do you beat me? I'm so much bigger than you." And Rich said, "You're fat. That's why."
Yeah.
That's great. I said, Richie, that's a good accolade. You're probably the only person who's ever competed against Victor, because I don't think he ever competed after that.
Richard, no, he didn't. He competed. Yeah, he ever right.
Right.
Yeah, because Rich got his head.
Yeah, I think I believe that's the teenage Victor Richards.
Problem is that started. Rich was like, okay, if I can beat if Gaspari was like, if I can beat Victor Richards, I can beat Haney.
That's right.
I mean, it just motivated him, right?
Oh yeah, it just made him train harder. Richie didn't, you couldn't tell Rich you can't tell Rich Gaspari you can't do something because he's the hardest working guy. I told you when we got there, I got there on Friday and I had to do a seminar Friday night. So I went to the venue about 6 when they were doing check-ins and everyone's like, where's Richie? And he's like, oh, I just picked him up. One of the guys like, I picked him up from the airport. He said he had to go train legs. So I had to drop him at the gym. I said, Richie, you train like you got the Olympia coming up like next week, He's like, I can't miss leg day. He goes, I can't miss legs,
After the show's over, I'll text Rich and say, you got to watch the latter part of the show because I worked, I guess, 3 summers in Los Angeles at the bodybuilding when Rich was competing at the Mr. Olympia. And Rich was I saw everyone train who was top 10 at the Olympia. And no one held a candle to Rich's volume, intensity, and weight, period. So out of the top 10 in the Olympia 3 years straight, Rich, his training intensity would smoke theirs.
Was he strong too?
Strong, endurance, and his diet he had the only diet, can you imagine? He had the only diet I would approve of because it was just everything was weighed, everything was measured.
Right.
I was stunned when I went out to California, and I was only 19, I think.
Yeah.
People did not weigh their food.
Oh, he was the only one doing it? Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
He was only like, I took him to his room where he was going to stay, and he just had to get there. The first thing came out of his bag. What do you think, Dave? First thing.
The scale.
Of course.
That's awesome.
It was the first thing he put on the kitchen counter, and that thing was like his key. Like he thought he was the bomb because he had that scale. And I told him, or he told me, he might have said like people don't even measure their food or something. I'm like, I've been eating 8 weeks. No one measures.
He's really the first guy to ever have striated glutes, as far as I know, right? I mean,
well, he had striated glutes, striated pecs, striated quads.
Yeah.
History. I mean,
he said that when he was posing for some guy in the gym, and the guy's like, "Your freaking glutes are striated." No one even knew what that was because no one had striated glutes. And he's like, "I was just so lean." He goes that everything was striated on me, like you said.
Pecs, quads.
Yeah.
He had phenomenal abs. I think his best look, even though people were critical of it, I liked his 87 look.
Was that when he placed second behind Haney?
He might have got third. They said he was too heavy. It's just he came in fuller, and I thought it worked, but I don't know. I think they just wanted to see like death shredded, which was 2 years prior. He was still the hardest guy by far on stage.
Right.
85. What was his first line? I don't even know. 85, 86, 87. Those were his heyday years.
Yeah.
And he was the original Nick Walker. There was no social media, but I can tell you that when he had at the bodybuilding camp his week, he would have to be there full week, and he would have to like do seminars every day, and he'd do like a nutrition chat, and then he'd do a training seminar, and I think he would train. You could watch him train, and then like a meet and greet at night. He'd do this like every day for like 7 days for the same 7 group of people, but his fan base was like a Lee Priest type. People just, I'm coming from all over to see Rich Gaspari.
Right.
And, it was interesting to see that. I think his week, income-wise for the camp, would outstrip Lee Haney's, and Lee Haney was Mr. Olympia.
Wow.
So he would sell more packages where people come and stay for the week than Can you imagine, Dave, if we had a bodybuilding camp like the week before the Olympia and fans out and stay at the same hotel and out all day long with the Olympia? You could sell the tickets for like 12 grand, 14 grand for the week. Like
I know. Maybe we should do a training camp. We got to do. Maybe we can make a bodybuilding.
I think it costs an 89, 99, 209, 19. So you're talking 36 years ago. I think it was $1,000 for like six nights.
Wow. So you'd have to be like about $5,000 now, probably today.
I mean, have to be. You can't tell me $1,000 was a lot of money in 1989.
Yeah, but there was really no access to the athletes like there is now on social media, though. So it might not be as as.
Yeah. I'm gonna DM him now and tell me he looked like trash last week.
He told me when he was like 13. There was I forget who it was. There was a guy in the gym, and he would pick him up, like, and take him. Unlike you, who walked to the gym, he had someone pick him up and take him to the gym in the morning or something like that. And they would train together. And he thought it was I said, you did it when you were 13? He goes, yeah, 13. He started. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
He was so good by 18.
I know. But that's why I said, how are you so good by 18? Because I started at 13, he said. I said, oh, that explains it. It's and he was disciplined at 13, he said. It wasn't like, some kids just go work out, but they don't eat right. He was eating like, bodybuilder at 13 years old,
Yeah.
So his workout, I told this story on stage because Dean Caputo introduced both Rich and I said, listen, Rich is, I know you're giving me accolades. Rich is an icon compared to me. I said, but I remember I did a guest posing in PA. I think it was York, PA, or it was like someplace in Pennsylvania. And Rich at the time hadn't competed. And I don't know if he didn't have a lot of money at that point, but he probably didn't, because he wasn't winning shows or anything like that. And he essentially came to the show to launch Gaspari Nutrition. He drove himself. He had a little van. He took all the stuff out. He set up a booth himself. I was there to guest pose. He was there to showcase his products, and he did it all by himself. And I said, you know what? I was so impressed by the fact that this guy, who was a bodybuilding star, was humble enough to come in his own car by himself and launch his product line, because that was the kind of work ethic that Rich Gaspari had. He said, Dave, let me make the story even better. He's like, you probably didn't know this, but I had a Porsche. He said, I sold the Porsche to buy the van so that I could transport all my product around with me when I would set these booths up at these local shows. So that shows you right there that Rich Gaspari has no ego. He gave up the Porsche, which he said that was the dream car I had, because he wanted to launch a business, and he knew he needed the money. I mean, isn't that a great? I mean, that right then and there, it shows you how unselfish he is.
Yeah, I always call. I've said it before. I call, Rain Man.
Yes.
The bodybuilding Rain Man, because hard work. Gotta work hard. Hard work. Wake up in the morning, work hard. That's mantra. Yeah. And he lives by it, and that's why he's really successful.
No, I know. No, believe me, I'm still motivated by him, because you know what? I guess he's about 62 now, and he travels more than I do. He's got a 5-year-old son too. He gets his butt on the airplanes. He goes to the Middle East. He goes all over the place to network with people. And, we were talking about business and, how the business has changed and, how expensive protein is. And he was, giving me all his ideas. This guy doesn't stop. I mean, he's unbelievable. He really is. I think that I'm motivated and I'm focused on what I do, but he's as focused, if not more than I am, on single-minded.
Dave, it goes back to the scale. Everything you know about him is that scale.
Yeah, exactly. But Chris, we're sitting at the table together, we're eating, right? And the guy Rodney, who's driving us around, is there too, and he's a super good guy, friend of Dean's when they grew up together. And Rich reaches into his pocket, and I reach into my pocket, independently of each other, and we pull out a bag, the same little crumply plastic like sandwich bag that we have our vitamins in. And we reached into the sandwich bag at the same time, and we got the vitamins in our hand. I said, Rich, it's almost very eerie that the two of us are just as neurotic. So I was giving him some more neurotic. I said, Rich, do you test your blood sugar every morning? He goes, no, I don't do that. I said, he goes, how do I do that? I said, you got to go to Walmart. You got to, and I'm telling him the blood sugar monitor we get. I'm adding to his rituals now because, you know, I want to make sure that he does everything right. I said, you got to know your blood sugars. I said, Rich, come on, man. I said, don't slack on this. Because he's also very into his health and he wants to make sure he does everything right. And so, but yeah, we have a commonality because we're both very driven and we're both neurotic and we both have all little rituals that we do every day, from going to the gym to tanning to, you know, taking our vitamins to making sure we get all our meals in. He still eats 6 meals a day, like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, of course he does. And he weighs I wonder if he weighs the food, you know?
Chris, he might have a little scale that he didn't want to show me. You know?
They'll fold up scale.
Anyway, I had Rich. If you're watching this, I had a great time with you this past week, and we got to get him on the show. We've had him on before. We got to get him on and talk about some of the old days again, because I think people really need to hear these stories. They're great stories, and thank you, Dean Caputo, for bringing us out. Also, I had a great time the whole weekend. The hospitality was awesome. He's invited me back next year. I will be there again on Memorial Day. So if you guys want to plan a trip on Memorial Day 2026, you can go to Dean Caputo's show in Streetsboro, Ohio, and I'll be there doing my seminar. So thank you, Dean. And congratulations to Reagan Grimes. He is going to the Olympia. For now, we're out of time. Chris, as we say every week here at Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.
We'll see you next week.